Hey everyone, Pocky here, and I thought I'd try a different format for a video again to go over the patch. And instead of having the patch notes up and doing that, I figure I will just have some gameplay from a game yesterday in the background, so hopefully it's not too distracting. I kind of faded it out a little bit, and we'll just talk about some of the new cards and my thoughts, especially, I went over my thoughts yesterday on stream before playing, and now after playing, honestly, most of those thoughts were pretty in line. But I'll kind of just expand on them and go through my thoughts on the patch, what is good, and what could be better. So I guess the first thing to talk about are the Murlocs. There's some new Murlocs that we have. Swamp Striker is a new 1-drop after you summon a Murloc, gain +1 attack. So this is basically like Tidecaller, the 1/2 that we had for a long time, where you can get the attack, pretty high just by summoning Murlocs. And then our new 2-drop Murloc is Tad. When you saw this, add another random Murloc to your hand. Well, what's that like? That's like Elementals. Elemental's a token. Okay, so we kind of catch on. They're replacing Tidehunter and Murloc here, right? So they removed our Murloc token, and they removed Murloc, our kind of 2-drop tempo Murloc, and they switched them actually. I really like how they did this actually. One of the problems you had playing Murlocs is everything was predicated around Sephin. Sephin is kind of like the meta determinant on Murlocs right now, right? You just try and get poison on all your Murlocs, and that's Murlocs. And the only hero that kind of doesn't do that is usually Flurgle, or sometimes you're a hero that can get Brand and you roll into the Murlocs and make something happen there. But what could happen when you're playing Sephin and you did try and get like a lot of the health and play with like Honcho and stuff, is you'd put a bunch of health on your Murlocs, but you wouldn't be able to get poison because you wouldn't be able to trigger the Avenge, and it's just weird, and it was just hard to get attacked sometimes. Murloc had this issue where it was nice attack early, but then it didn't really scale. Same with like War Leader, right? It's good attack early, but it doesn't scale. So our new Murloc kind of addresses that, and as you summon stuff, as you buff up the health, it naturally grows in attack, and I really like that. And it's actually replacing Murloc, right? It's going to be your Murloc that has 4 health and gets a lot of attack, and can stay on your board for tempo. And then Tad is replacing our token, and it's not summoning, it's not a battle cry, so you're not getting extra stuff that way, and you don't get the benefits of token stuff on different heroes, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you're still getting options for econ, and it's even better for actually playing Murlocs because you're cycling Murlocs and you can get a Murloc. You don't need to give up board space, and so I really like it. It's econ. It's not on 1. It moves away from some of the 1-drop stuff, and so it's actually a really elegant change, and I really like the Murloc stuff, and I'm excited to see where that goes. I think Sephin is maybe still a little bit too strong, but again, that gets into another discussion because poison is maybe in a weird spot now, and obviously you probably know what I'm talking about, but I'll talk about that in a second. So that's our Murlocs. To go along with that change, and I'm not going in the order of the patch notes right now, we have Acolyte. Acolyte has been in the game since they sort of reworked some of the taunt stuff. They removed Righteous Protector and brought Acolyte in as a new tier 1 taunt that would be harder to play with Arm. It worked with Taraji a little bit better to buff up your board and play tempo that way. And so it's nice that we still have this option. They can play around a lot of things. They can play around Adina, can play around shields. It provides 2 taunts. It's really good, but it's not on 1. And part of the problem is that when it was on 1, it was too strong, and it helped make tier 1 overall a little bit too strong for my taste. And we saw a lot of people playing Warrior Curve, or even staying on 1 until like 8 gold, just because you were able to grab Econ with Tidehunter on 1, Acolyte, just strong tempo. Like, it was just better to stay on 1 than go to 2 because the 1-drops were so good. And now with the Acolyte to 2, we kind of move away, and 1 maybe doesn't be, it's probably not as strong, which is cool, right? So I like this change a lot. To go along with that, we have the shutter changes, right? So Shutter's hero power here is moving down to 1 because it's getting a lot weaker. You don't have Tidehunter sort of abused with the hero power anymore. And so that takes away a lot of the power of Shutterwalk, and so that's just a preemptive buff to Shutterwalk because Shutterwalk already wasn't performing well. However, Tidehunter being removed also changes the balance of a lot of other heroes like Jandis, Bucktusk, Malygos, and I mean, there's a lot of heroes that relied on tokens, right? And so that's going to be something to keep an eye on, is those heroes are not going to be as strong anymore. And especially, they did get nerfed a little bit because those heroes for a while were the strongest heroes in the game up until buddies were released. And because they were so strong, the buddies that were released alongside them are a little weaker. And so more recently, they've been a little bit closer to balance, but in the past, they were the dominant forces, in large part because of their ability to abuse the extra econ of having a token and being able to have multiple minions on board, whether it's to hero power it or swap it or look for triples, etc. So that change is really going to change up some of the hero stuff, and Shutterwalk being one of them gets a preemptive buff to make its hero power a little bit stronger. And I don't think Shutterwalk's very good still. I didn't think it was great before. Even with both tokens in, it was playable, but not good per se. And I don't think this changes that at all. So a little bit unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. While we're on the topic of heroes, there's a new hero being released. Phelan. Phelan is pretty cool. It's a little bit of a mix of like an AFK and an Elise, right? You're skipping a turn at your first turn, but then every other turn, every other tier, you're getting a discover of that tier that you get once you level to that point. So on 2, 4, and 6, you can discover. This allows you to play a bit of a standard curve and then power level a bit to 6, assuming that discover that you sort of set aside for yourself will be able to give you the tempo on that turn. And then to hold you over, you know, you're going to be a little weak skipping your first turn, and you know, you don't really have a hero power that's giving you tempo or anything other than the free 2-drop. You're getting a buddy's Submersible Chef. It's a battle cry, and that's important to note again for later. We'll talk about battle cry buddies. But you're adding a random 1, 3, and 5 to your hand, and that's really strong as well. And so this hero didn't seem great at first, but I'm kind of coming around that maybe it's not that bad. If you hit good things, this hero is going to be good. And part of the reason for that is the new 6-drop that we'll talk about in a second, because getting to 6 is going to be really strong. And this buddy does that along with the hero power pretty well. You might not get it right away, you might take a few hits, but if you can set yourself up for that success, you're in a really good spot. And so the 2-drop is not too important, but getting a good 4-drop so that you can stabilize as you level to 4 is really strong. And getting a 6-drop that gives you something like immediately, some immediate power, whether that's like maybe like a Felbat with some demons on board, an Adina with some dragons on board, something like that, right? Even like a genie that can be strong like right away and start giving you stuff right away is going to be really, really good. And so yeah, if you hit here, it's going to be good stuff. And so that's the new hero. So we went over the new minions and the tier 1 stuff. The other thing to keep an eye out for is our new, where is it? Baby Crush. Our new 5-drop beast. Now this is kind of like Direhorn, if you guys remember that was a tier 5 beast 7/7. It was a tempo, and when it overkilled, it summoned a 5/5. It was okay, and then it was bad, right? The meta and the power creep of the game just passed it up, and it was awkward to make work. You had to get overkill, which is tough in a game that values having obviously high stats, high shields, and buffing up a beast isn't super easy, especially without giving it taunt. And so Direhorn just didn't really end up having a place in the game. Enter Baby Crush. Baby Crush is insane tempo. You are getting 16/16 in stats, generally, on a 5-drop. It is really good. It works in some ways like a Prester's Pyro Spawn in one card for beasts, because that 9/9 will attack first and pop shields, and then your Baby Crush that perhaps you've buffed up and attack afterwards. It's really, really strong, and dare I say maybe even a little bit toxic tempo, because of how many stats it is right away. So someone is tripling into this. We kind of had a little bit of a spot where we didn't have a ton of tempo 5-drops. You saw people taking like Light Fangs and Mithrexes occasionally if they had Menagerie. Mama Bear, obviously a very nice spike card, especially if you can buy some beasts. But usually you have to wait a turn to buy those beasts, right? Because you usually use your gold to level and buy your triple, and then you don't have gold to, do something after you triple into the 5. Yeah, at least when it's very early. And the issue with Baby Crush is it's just a mad amount of tempo. You're probably not going to lose when you triple into it early as a 5-drop. And having a really good backup, having really strong tempo like that, and having strong direction on 5 is a dangerous combination, right? Because you can go for a Bran, a Nomi, a Hogger, a Mama Bear, and if you miss and hit Baby Crush, you don't feel bad because you're not losing fights. And so what could be, that turn that you're supposed to be punished for greeting now becomes a turn that you probably just aren't going to lose because you have this crazy strong tempo 5-drop really early. So yeah, maybe some tuning is needed on this. I like the idea of Beast having some more stuff, but yeah, I mean, we see how strong this can be pretty much off the bat. And yeah, in my experiences so far, it kind of rings true. Like, it is what you would expect. In terms of the crazy tempo. While we're on beasts, Valor is moving down to tier 4. Well, okay. We might as well just talk about it because this is the reason it's moving to 4. Maexxna is being removed. Now, Reborn Poison was an issue. These two cards in combination was too strong. That is just the state of things. They were dominant when Beasts and Murlocs were in. You had a fairly good idea that at the beginning of the game, end game boards were going to look like Reborn Maexxna and Amalgadons. Murlocs tended to the Amalgadons because Primal Fin exists, and then you could also fill your board with Sephin and that, and then you can end with Selflesses and Divine Shield Poison with extra lives via Reborn on the Maexxna. It's just really strong. And so we saw that. Maybe a bit too often. The problem is the poison is necessary. As we look at this board across the, this game, I mean, look at these Murlocs. These are really, really big. Granted, it's turn 9. But poison at some point is necessary to deal with really big minions. And what we've seen in the past meta is that when poisons are out, when Murlocs and beasts are out, so no access to Stefan, no access to Maexxna, and your only access to poison was Spore and Amalgadon, generally stats builds one out. Pirates and Ellies are able to put on enough utility via Wildfire Cleave, Pseudo Cleave, Crackling Cyclone, Divine Shields, and the ability of infinite pirates to sort of just get whatever they want, right? They can pick up gold and selfless because they have infinite gold too. It's really, really good, and so I understand why they wanted to get rid of Reborn Maexxna, and I understand why they would want to keep Rattler, because adding Reborn to beasts has been super necessary in terms of making them viable. Reborn Macaw is super important for like actual true beast builds. Reborn in Goldrin or Leaper is really important. Even Sewer Rat can be a really, really big benefit. Reborning Mama Bear makes it a lot more consistent and safe. Those things are necessary for beasts to work as a tribe, and so Rattler existing first off is good for the game if it's not solely being used to reborn Maexxna, which is what the problem was. And having it move down to 4 is also good for the game because it's allowing some of those things that we're talking about to exist, right? Those beast spells that it sort of facilitates. It makes it much easier to find that reborn. They're removing Maexxna, a poison, without replacing it with anything, and that's a bit of the problem. There's going to be a lot of lobbies where we don't have access to poison, and so stats are just going to reign supreme. Just like the lobbies that we've already been in and experienced where that's the case, but it's going to be even harder because those lobbies are going to be more and more frequent. They also are going to happen more because certain things were added to promote some of these high rolls, and now we're not going to have as much counterplay. So I would have loved if they added poison to another tribe or did something in place of poison to be able to counter some of these high stats builds. One idea I had was maybe using a demon, right? And so it's a tribe that can be in or out, but have it have a death rattle that is like a curse almost, where if a minion kills it, then that minion dies. There's minions like that in standard, they exist. It'd be cool to design something like that in Battlegrounds because it would work a little differently than poison, right? Divine Shield on it wouldn't synergize as hard, so when you played selfless with it, it wouldn't be as good. It, however, would be able to kill Divine Shields, and that would open up some interesting plays. Maybe you'll use it to try and kill an Amalgadon. Maybe people play around with more taunts that way. There's a lot of like thoughts there and ideas there that I think are really phenomenally interesting if they were, you know, maybe considered a little bit more. Anyways, there's a lot to that idea. There's a lot of pros and cons and everything, and it would have been interesting to see if they were to approach it like that. But as it stands, we're just down a poison, and so a lot of these things that poison keeps in check are just not gonna be able to be dealt with, which is unfortunate, but that's just what the case is. Yeah, we'll see. I understand that poison is annoying, but it's necessary. I think a lot of the balance is predicated on Battlegrounds having a bit of a rock, paper, scissors element, right? Poisons are a little bit harder to get stats, so they can lose to death rattles and shields. Poisons beat stats because they have infinite attack and they can trade into them, and you can play some shields, and that's how you can beat the stats. And then the stats beat the death rattles and shields because they've scaled beyond health-wise what those builds can do. I think that's a really key aspect to the balance of Battlegrounds. So, yeah, a little disappointed to see Maexxna go, I guess. That being said, 6 did get a pretty crazy minion. That is Friend of a Friend. It is absolutely disgusting, and we've seen it played in this game a few times, and how good it can be. I'll remove the picture for a second. You can see that we got Ticketus Buddy off of this with a brand on board. We will be able to find more Friend of Friends in the shop. We have one in hand. We're going to be able to just pump them out. You see how crazy full our hand is and everything, and yeah, a lot of that is you're playing brand with Friend of a Friend, which oftentimes can generate money, generate stats, do a lot of good things because buddies were designed to be very strong. And they are. And we're seeing some of the impact of that already on how good Friend of a Friend is. It is wild. It is such a good card. It's probably the strongest card that they have introduced at face value into this game. I want to come back to it in a second. I just want to quick mention some of the other patch changes because they don't warrant that much discussion. I say they don't warrant that much discussion. There's one topic that does warrant a lot of discussion, but we'll get to it and it'll tie in and we'll segue from it. So Mithrax is changing from +1/2 to +2/2. This is fine. Mithrax wasn't super good. The attack is relevant. A lot of things are scaling past what +1/1 via Menagerie was able to give you, and so +2/2 seems fine. It puts it a little bit more in line with a Light Fang in terms of overall stats, and it's still limited in some ways. In that it's tribalist and hard to buff otherwise, and hard to get shield. Basically those things, right? So that's Mithrax. Also, a former 5-drop is getting moved to 4 in Strong Shell Scavenger, and I like this one a lot as well. I think it's a good buff. It wasn't played a ton in a ton of comps, but it was nice when it could be played because you had enough stats to make something happen. And a lot of the taunt comp stuff, taunt comp LOL, but mechs and the like, even duos, things like that, were on 4. Even if you're, say, Arana playing Master of Realities and you want to find something out, buff, you want to stay down and be able to buff things, then Strong Shell gives you the option to stay down and do that. So I like it. Simple change. It makes it a little bit more accessible. There's a few more copies. It's a good buff, but it's less relevant because so many other things have upped their scaling significantly. So Strong Shell kind of meeting that feels like Mithrax meeting that. So solid change. Minor, but solid change. Nosey is getting +2/2. I don't think this is a big change at all, right? Nosey was taken in certain situations where I'm not going to die, so I think I have enough time to, sit on a Nosey looter on board. If you found direction, if you found better tempo, you were almost always taking those over Nosey looter, right? Unless you got the Nosey looter early. Then Nosey is probably pickable in the same situations. You're just trying to minimize the times that you might die, right? By picking up a Nosey, and that's good. So I'm fine with that change. The last thing to talk about, and I don't have an image for it, is they're reintroducing armor. Just based on what we've seen the changes to be, the armor changes, the armor tiers are based on lower, I guess I shouldn't say lower MMR. It's based on game-wide win rates, from what I can tell, which is kind of cool. And in a lot of ways, unfortunately, it's not cool. The problem with it is that I understand wanting to balance the game around, you know, the majority of the player base. However, I think there is an argument that things should be somewhat balanced around the higher tier players, because it just allows other players to try and reach that peak. In sports, you don't see, like, you know, changing rules to benefit you know, like first grade level players or something, right? Like that's not really how it works. You might have a few rule changes here and there, but like the game is not balanced around that. I think that there's some issues with the armor tiers because of that, and I won't go into the specifics, but you know, some heroes like Tess and stuff got armor, and some others that didn't perform as well, like Cariel, at the highest level, didn't get armor. And I don't think that lower MMR players necessarily notice some of those differences in those very small percentage plays. So yeah, now going off of that, I fizzle Ice Block here. The fact that I even had Ice Block is crazy, and the reason is this card, Friend of a Friend. Going off of what I was talking about, this is a card that to me screams that the game is being balanced around trying to make things fun at the expense of balance. At first glance, there's no way that this is balanced. After having watching it be played a little bit, there's no way it's balanced. Look at our hand. This is very frequent for people right now. There's friends of friends, discovers, everything. I will, like, there's a seafood slinger, there's a ticketus buddy that we didn't use. We fizzled an Ice Block. The MMR, that's EU. It's fine. It's still high MMR gameplay. It's happening a lot. I'll end up pulling up the stats here, or the end board, and you can see how wild that is. Was not hard to put together, and we had a lot of juice in the tank, right? We had a lot of juice in the tank. You are able to put together these wacky high roll boards with ease now, when before it took a little bit of work to get to that point. Now, if you have the right hero, if you hit the right things, you get the right matchups and are able to get to 6, you just play it into these buddies and they open up absurd amounts of high rolls. So far, my games have been extremely high variance. High roll or get high rolled. This Scabs game was a high roll, just basically off of the friend of friend. A lot of these games, you're either winning or losing because of that card. And that brings in a lot of variance to the game. Esports are coming up. Lobby Legends is coming up. And if our past experiences are any indication, Friend of a Friend is here to stay for a little bit. I think the fastest that a minion has gotten removed is Baron's Blacksmith. Now it's present for like 2 months. Lystra, I think, is the second closest one, and that was in for 3 months longer than Baron's Blacksmith. If Friend of a Friend is in the game for the next 2 months, it will go through the first 2 Lobby Legends tournaments. If based on what we've learned so far in Lobby Legends is supposed to determine the best of the best based on play and not, you know, stream viewership numbers or popularity or anything like that. It's a strictly qualified through ladder based on your MMR, which is supposed to be the best indicator of your skill as a player that you can sort of have objectively. That says that you want the tournament to be sort of the pinnacle of skill expression and competition. And meanwhile, you have the game developing in a way that's promoting RNG and making high rolls more accessible to the masses, right? I don't think it's good for the game, and I think it's a scary direction. Is it fun? Yes. Absolutely, it is fun at the moment to pop off somebody and do something crazy, you know, with 7 Amalgadons, 9 Amalgadons, I mean, more than exist, or, you know, some crazy game where you steal someone else's buddy that allowed. Those games were fun. They were fun before, and I understand that Friend of a Friend is added for fun because those situations are fun. But when you stray too far from balance and you make the game have some design that feels a little bit like you either high roll or get high rolled, that means that when you're the person high rolling, it's a lot of fun. For the other 7 people in the lobby, it's just a game of waiting to see when you die, and that's not fun. When you talk about the overall enjoyment of the game, 7-1, feeling that it's not fun, that's a dangerous direction. That balance catches up. So just because the fun things are happening, you know, that fun in the one game, is that enough to outweigh not feeling fun in 7? Or even 5 or 6, if, you know, whatever it is. I don't think so. I don't think it's enough. So this is a worrisome addition, and I'm not the only person that feels that way. And yeah, I think it's a little weird that they removed Hamul semi-recently, which they said was a win more card, and then you add this and it feels even more like that, because if you're ahead and you can go to 6 and find Friend of a Friend, that's the win more type stuff. That's the kind of stuff that you might try to avoid with Hamul, making high rolls more consistent. This is just high roll in a card by itself. Just hit. Just find a brand. Just go to 6 and then just hit. Or even triple into this. And then a lot of times those buddies that you get, it's econ. It's giving you a battle cry. And there's a lot of battle cries that you can find. You can find Finley buddy. You can find Ticketus buddy. You can find Yogg buddy. There's a lot of things. The new Phelan buddy is a battle cry that's giving you 3 minions. If you have a brand, it's infinite gold. with the Friend of a Friend, it's just very, very crazy how much power is packed into one single card. Perhaps more than we've ever seen before in Battlegrounds. You know, you can argue about Amalgadon existing, but Friend of a Friend gives you access to Amalgadon. They're existing in the same game state. And it often gives you access to multiple Amalgadons. And yeah, it's just very, very insane how strong Friend of a Friend is. And I think the saddest part about it for me is that a lot of the other changes were very elegant and very nice. I think the Murloc changes are fantastic. The way they kind of switched the tier 1 and tier 2 and how it reduces a lot of the consistency of staying on tier 1. It adds tempo, it adds options there. It makes Murlocs that kind of needed a little bit of help. You know, it makes the Murloc package itself better if you're playing Murlocs rather than just trying to play other stuff. That's really cool. There's one less battle cry that is relevant for a lot of heroes, right? Bran is going to be a little bit harder because there's one less battle cry in one. You know, the token heroes get worse. If you're trying to play Caligos, maybe there's a little less, but there's still benefits of what is the new one called again? Tad has benefits that you can get, right? From not having to clear a spot to get that econ, being able to find it off Primal Fin, being able to find Primal Fin or other higher tier Murlocs. Like I said, that's good for if you're playing Murlocs, so you can get a Coldlight Seer rather than a Murloc Scout. That's a really big difference for Murlocs, not necessarily if you don't have Murlocs. That's a great change. It's very elegant, you know? Moving Acolyte to 2, it's simple, but it does a lot. That's a good change. But all that is being outweighed by what I feel are two glaring mistakes in adding Friend of a Friend and removing access to poison in Maexxna, because the high rolls are insane and they're going to be fun for now, but they're going to be really frustrating for a lot of players very, very quickly. But overall, yeah, that's my thoughts on the patch. I mean, I'm always willing to talk about it more on stream, so be sure to visit me at twitch.tv/PockyPlays. If you like this video, like I said, it's a new format. I'm experimenting with it. It's still a really long patch notes analysis review type thing. I'm not editing it. I'm just doing this in one take and trying to go through my thoughts, so it's a little maybe discombobulated. But if you like the idea, if you think this is something I should continue to do, let me know in the comments. And yeah, hopefully we can improve or adjust and go from there. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, please subscribe, like, comment, and be sure to follow us for more content on Twitch, Twitter, and all of our other socials that will be in the description below. Along with, I'll put the patch notes in the description below. So, thanks again for watching, and as always, peace.